Avril Kossoff, come on down. You're the first contestant on Real Magic. Mary Donor, come on down. You're the next contestant on Real Magic. And now, KLVW-TV presents an exciting 40 minutes of fun. Real Magic's The Game Show Show.
So Mary, here we are. We decided to do game shows.
It's been a long time.
It has been a long time,
long.
but we're back. You know, we were picked because game shows, they use contestants that had something that would stand out, whether it was personality, looks, quirkiness.
I think we're all of those, aren't we?
Pretty much, but here we are. But we have a lot of material to cover, so let's begin, because we want you to learn all about game shows. So Americans began listening to game shows on the radio, and they were hooked. They just loved the excitement and thrill of competition. Game shows, they made a natural transition, of course, to television, and that was in the late 1940s and early 1950s. People loved to play along with their contestants and try their wits against them.
Nothing has changed.
Nothing has changed. Yeah. Some game shows were edgy, and that was like the honeymoon game, and some were for intelligence, which was Jeopardy! In the late 1950s, the genre just exploded. It exploded, especially with shows like the $64,000 Challenge, Dotto, and 21. The pressure on the networks were to program very dramatic shows as possible. Dotto made its debut in 1958, and it was extremely popular. Everybody watched Dotto, although I didn't know Dotto. Did you?
No, I was only a wee child.
Well, I was a child, but I did not know anything
I didn't
about
know a lot
Dotto.
of these game shows
I know. But it made a meteor rise, and as quickly as it rose, it halted. And it halted because there were scams. So you're going to tell us about that.
Yeah. I'm going to just use it once. I'm going to spill the tea. And for us people who are in social media, spill the tea means I'm going to gossip or give you some scandal behind the scenes in a lot of these game shows. And Dotto, the host of Dotto, as Avril had mentioned, was Jack Nars, rather. And he also hosted the $64,000 question. And what Dotto was you connected the dots. There was two contestants, and they connected the dots. And that when they connected the dots, it would show a profile or something else like that. And it was the first game show that actually broadcast on two networks, CBS and NBC, at different times. One day, Nars was told not to come into work. And that's because a woman by the name of Marie Wynn, who was a contestant on Dotto, had a photograph of the answers, had a piece of paper of the answers in her pocketbook. And it was discovered by one of the producers.
So it was rigged.
Oh yeah, it was definitely rigged. And I think that we're going to insert at this point in time a photograph of the actual answers from Dotto from 1958. Now, going on to the other big scandal, and this was fascinating because I absolutely knew nothing about this show, was 21. Mm-hmm. Now, 21 the big sponsor was Geritol of 21. And the host was Jack Barry. Now, in a lot of these game shows where there was something inappropriate going on, Jack Barry was a common denominator. And back in 1950-something, 58, I would say, there was a contestant named Herb Stempel who was on this show. He was from the Queens, and I believe he was a teacher in high school or one of the educational facilities in Queens. He was a boom for the ratings for a long time. He was a long-time contestant. And then the ratings started to drop. And the producer at that time was Don Enright. And when the ratings started to drop, naturally Geritol was getting involved because the popularity of the show was definitely tied into the sponsors of the show. And when the ratings started to drop, they said to the producer, you better get somebody up here because Herb is not appealing to the people. He was very common, kind of nerdy looking, all right? And he was very nerdy in his delivery and everything else. But he was very dramatic, and there was a reason why he was very dramatic. Because the producers would cut the air conditioning to the soundproof booths and make them hot and make him sweat. They also told him when to dab his brow, when to pause, and everything else.
Everything was scripted.
Absolutely scripted to the T. And they had a big production of the questions being locked in a vault off premises, and the guards walking the questions to Jack Barry, and it was a whole big production, and the people were enamored and glued to the television. They would rush home from work to see 21. They would go into store windows to watch 21 because of Herb Stempel, and he was just a regular person. Then all of a sudden, Charles Van Doren comes on the scene. You have this really good-looking guy from a very prominent family. Charles Van Doren's father was a poet, well-published, and his mother was an author, well-published. And here's Charles Van Doren. He's a professor at Columbia University. I think it was literature, but I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter. But he wanted to become as famous as his parents. So they approached him and said, will you listen? Well, if we give you the answers, will you play along?
Who did that?
The producers.
Okay.
And Herb Stempel knew he had to throw the show the minute that Charles Van Doren came on. So the question that Herb Stempel was asked, what movie won the best Academy Award in 1950-something? The answer was Marty, but he hesitated, he drabbed his brow, he was dramatic, and he says On the Waterfront, and he loses.
Which was the year before, actually.
Yes, but it was a very common question, and everybody was like, oh, how could he lose? But it was rigged.
Yes.
So now Stempel is very, very upset that he loses, and now Van Doren comes on. All right, so now we have a clip of that particular segment where you see the drama, where him wiping his brow, and he's hesitating, and he says, On the Waterfront. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to see that clip right now.
Yeah.
The game show 21 aired on NBC from 1956 to 1958. Two contestants would compete against each other to correctly answer enough trivia questions to score 21 points. When the show first aired, the game was played honestly, but the contestants failed to answer most questions. The show's sponsor, Geritol, demanded changes to boost the show's ratings. As a result, 21 would become the first show to completely script and choreograph all of their broadcasts. Not only were contestants told all the questions and answers, but they were coached on body language and told exactly when to touch their face or hesitate to appear stressed. They were also told when to answer incorrectly on purpose. Herb Stempel was a middle-class city college student from New York when he joined 21 as a contestant. The producers gave him a Marine-style haircut and a shabby, ill-fitting suit to make him look like a poor GI. The show cast him to be an underdog. They told him when to pause, when to start breathing heavy, and when to mop his brow. Herb Stempel recalls that he would sit down with the producers in their office each week, and they would show him all the questions and answers and rehearse all of his movements. As the weeks went on, Herb Stempel kept up his winning streak. His celebrity also grew. He received fan mail, strangers began to recognize him on the street, and his family, friends, and college professors were all proud of him. However, his ratings began to drop, and the sponsor and producers of 21 knew it was time to find a new star. Herb Stempel agreed to take a dive and end his run on the show in exchange for a job in television. Charles Van Doren, an English instructor at Columbia University, was selected to be Herb's successor. Over the next 6 weeks, Charles was portrayed as the classy intellectual with a family of well-known writers. The lines had been drawn, and Charles was the new hero of the show. Week after week, producers would make sure the competition was close and would result in draws. On December 5th, 1956, host Jack Barry asked Herb Stempel the question,
What motion picture won the Academy Award for 1955?
Herb knew the answer was Marty, as that was one of his favorite films, but he did as he was instructed and incorrectly answered.
On the Waterfront. No, I'm sorry, the answer is Marty. Marty.
Herb Stempel went home with $69,500, which is the equivalent of about $760,000 today. Charles Van Doren's scripted triumph of Herb Stempel was viewed by 15 million people. Charles stayed on the show for 4 more months, armed with correct answers provided by producers, and he became one of the most beloved celebrities in the country. He went home with a total of $129,000 in winnings, which is equivalent to $1.4 million today. He graced the cover of Time magazine and signed a $50,000 a year contract with NBC's Today Show. Meanwhile, Herb Stempel never got the TV job he was promised and faded into Charles's shadow. Herb was resentful and wanted to whistleblow, but journalists were concerned about getting sued for libel. However, concrete evidence of rigging had been discovered on another game show, Dotto, and Herb was finally taken seriously. The floodgates opened and game shows were being exposed and taken off the air. In August 1958, a grand jury convened in New York City to investigate the allegations of fixing game shows. At the time, fixing a game show was not technically a crime. Producers of several different game shows denied the allegations. Former contestants were called to testify, but didn't want to ruin their reputations, so many of them denied being coached or given answers. A prosecutor on the case estimated that of the 150 sworn witnesses, only 50 told the truth. After a 9-month grand jury, no indictments were handed down and the judge sealed the report. Congressional hearings began on October 6, 1959, and Charles Van Doren confessed to the deception he took part in. Charles, along with a producer and 17 other contestants, were charged, arrested, and convicted of lying under oath to the New York grand jury. They all received suspended sentences and didn't spend any time in jail. Congress amended the Communications Act to prohibit the fixing of televised contests of intellectual knowledge or skill, and President Eisenhower signed the bill into law on September 13, 1960.
Okay, I have one little bit here because
ahead,
I'm
and
going
then
to
we'll
talk
go on.
about Van Doren here a little bit.
Sure.
He became a hero to the American public because he beat Herb Stempel. And he was such a hero. He was on the cover of Time magazine, and he won $129,000 on 21. And if you give the present value of that money, it's $1.4 million. He's now more famous than his parents. He's very happy. He's being rigged, et cetera, but he's got a guilty conscience. So he was not the most money winner actually in 21. There was another rigged contestant by the name of Elfrida Van Dorf. She actually won $250,000, which would be $2.2 million, and she also had the questions. So it's quite interesting. I watched the movie Quiz Show because it's based on this whole event.
Yes.
And it was fantastic. Now, Herb Stempel was a whistleblower. He tried to go to the grand jury to tell them about the cheating that was going on 21, but this show was so popular with the American public, and I'm not saying this is true, but apparently the judges were in the pockets of the big networks.
Yeah, it's all about the money.
Yeah, it's all
You know
about
that.
the money.
It's always about the money.
And just one other little quick thing that I want to talk about is, you think people would learn their lesson, okay? There was a show by Mark Burnett, who was very famous. He did The Apprentice and Survivor, and it was called Kids Genius. And those kids were given the answers in advance. That show never made it to network television.
Right.
So that's the big scandal. 21's like the #1 TV scandal in game shows.
Right. Well, we're going to get back to that because there was legislation that was done by Congress. But first, let me give you some history because I think that's important for you to know. In 1938, the first television game show was Spelling Bee. And in 1941, Truth or Consequences actually was an experimental broadcast. And we know how that worked out, don't we? Daytime game shows pervaded the popular culture, especially for the housewives. You know, I remember coming home from elementary school. For lunch, I was a walker, and I'd come home and Mother would be ironing my father's shirts, and she'd be watching the game shows. So it really focused on the housewives.
I remember Queen for a Day. Remember that?
Yeah.
That's not really a game show.
No, but yeah. But then higher stakes shows would air prime time. And this exception to that was You Bet Your Life. Do you remember that with Groucho Marx and the little bird would come down? Actually, that was a game show that was also interjected with a talk show. So so he was the first one to do that, and that was Groucho Marx. In the 1950s, the higher stakes, such as 21 and the $64,000 question, rose to popularity. However, the rise of the quiz shows was short-lived. In 1959, a higher stake game shows were biased or outscripted.
Yeah, Dotto and the 21 were
And
there.
scandal ratings declined,
Yeah.
and primetime games were canceled. Do you have anything more to add to that? Because this is your part.
No, I think we covered that particular scandal or two pretty well.
An early variant of game shows was the panel show, and that survived all of this. So what was the panel show? A panel show had celebrities in the show asking questions of ordinary people. So that would be like, what's my line? Or I've got a secret, and to tell the truth. Eventually, they were dropped. And in 1970, comedy-driven shows such as The Match Game and Hollywood Squares became popular. Now, you had to tell me something about that, didn't you?
I'm going to start with the panel show that was very popular, Password. And the host, and this is a good story here.
I know.
The Password was hosted by Alan Ludden. And as you mentioned, it was celebrities with ordinary people. And it was not a scripted show. It was just a spontaneous type of situation. And it was on from 1961 to 1967 and produced by Goodman and Todman, who were very, very big into the game shows. And there's a wonderful love story that came out of this show. And it involves the host, Alan Ludden, and Betty White. When this show began in 1961, Alan's wife was dying of cancer. And Betty White was a celebrity on the show during the third week. And Alan's wife passed away, and Betty had been married 3 times before, or 2 times before, sorry about that. And both of those marriages, the husbands were not so nice. So Alan's wife passed away, and he had 3 children. And Betty lived on the West Coast, and this was being filmed in New York City. So after a year, the producers of the show noticed a spark between Betty and Alan. And they went to their agents and set them up, and they didn't know about it, and gave them a summer stock show for 3 weeks. And they started to really fall in love. So this continued, and Betty was hesitant because Alan, she wanted Alan to properly mourn his wife, and Alan had 3 children he was raising. And she was living West Coast, he was living East Coast. So he would always say to Betty, good night. Then one time he said, good night, will you marry me? And she laughed and she laughed and she laughed. Well, this went on for a year. He would say, good night, Betty, will you marry me? And she laughed, but the attraction was definitely there, and they started to date. So one day for Easter, he sends her a bunny with diamond rings on it, and she says, I can't wait any longer. She calls him up and she said, I'm saying yes.
Yeah.
So she agreed to marry him.
Yeah, I want to add to that. He took that diamond, it was a wedding band, it was a eternity ring, what we call now, and he would wear it on a chain around his neck, and daily he would ask her, will you marry me?
Yes, will you marry me? And so she said yes, and they were married in June 14th, so it'll be this week, would be there in 1963. And we have a little clip of, you can see the interaction between the two.
And the love.
And the love from when they were on doing an interview. I don't remember who the host was at this point in time.
This is the lovely star of Hollywood and television, Alan Ludden's beautiful wife, Betty White.
Hello, Betty.
Hello, Alan.
What are your plans for the summer, Betty?
Well, I'm going to do some... What did you have in mind, Alan? I'm going to do some summer theater with my husband, Alan.
Where, Betty?
Alan and I are going to do, Alan Ludden, that is, on Password, are going to do Brigadoon in Patterson, New Jersey, and then we're going to do, I go to St. Louis, we're going to have a big fight, then I go to St. Louis and do King and I, then we make up, and Alan and I are going to get back together again in Janus, Dennis and Skowhegan.
Gee, I hope I can see it. Nice to have you here. It's a very great thrill to have Betty here. Your first partner tonight, Betty, is...
What kind of a honeymoon did you have?
This is my show, and I ask the question. You've really been recommending this institution of marriage, and I want to say that I appreciate all the good words you had to say for it. How long have you been married?
19 years.
Would you have been nervous if you were in my position tonight?
Well, if you don't know now, kid, there's not much I can tell you about the whole thing.
Bob and Anna, and it is. As they look at it, we'd like you to see it.
The password is romance.
Okay, start with you, Bob, 10 points.
Affair.
What was that word?
Affair. Careful, honey, it's a family show. Are you kissing my wife's hand there?
Well,
Who's
later
robbing
we'll...
this train?
Later it's an elbow, then it's shoulder.
Let's continue playing password.
You gave her a nice ring. That's
Yeah.
lovely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Were you on The Price is Right?
Betty, nice to have had you here.
Nice to have had you.
Played a
here.
very good game.
Thank you.
We'll see you all
It's
next
been
week at
fun
the
with
same
this
time or tomorrow on Daytime Password. Until then, this is Alan Ludden saying the password tonight is...
Home. Will you take me home, please, Mr. Ludden?
I certainly will, Miss Ludden. Thank you. Good night.
But you can just see the love that the two of them had. So one day she was on Oprah's show, and Oprah asked her, well, why haven't you married again? And she said, when you've had the best, who needs the rest?
Aww.
And then what I turned up during my research is that her assistant was with her on her deathbed, and the very last word she spoke was Alan.
Yeah. And Alan Ludden passed away from stomach cancer. He had stomach cancer. And she regrets that she waited that year before responding yes to marry him, because she said it was a wasted year.
They were married a total of 18
quite a
years.
romantic
Yeah,
story,
it was a
wasn't
wonderful
it?
story.
Oh, my little
No
heart.
scandal here, just a good
I know.
story.
So I want to get back to the scandals, okay? In response to the scandals, Congress awarded the Communications Act of 1934, which prohibited networks from pre-arranging the outcomes of quiz shows. It was since then, it's standard in the industry for them to actually watch over their own game shows. So the producers have to monitor their game shows. And at one point, I'm going to use your verbiage, at one point in time, the producers and the actors and the hosts would look around to make sure there were no notebooks with answers.
no.
And that there was, what is it called, the British police?
Scotland Yard.
Scotland Yard. They had Scotland Yard detectives on set watching to make sure everything was on the up and up.
They went to the extreme.
They really did. Now, in 1954 also, the U.S. Supreme Court got involved and said that contestants could actually win prizes. However, they could not contribute, the contestants, any monetary value or money to any of the prizes as a bribe to get the shows. 1960, here we go, color TV. So now there's a whole new genre coming in. And with that, we got the new Price is Right, the match game became the big money, and the Wheel of Fortune of 1975 also renewed itself. They became, now you have to realize, game shows were really only aired once a week. And at that time, because of color TV, they became 5 days a week. And later, you'll see that they came 7 days a week. That was the popularity of it so much. CBS phased out the game shows after a while, except for The Price is Right. In 1993, the Wheel of Fortune remained, and so did Jeopardy. And then, cable television.
Yeah, well,
so
we got the Game Show Network now.
Yeah, that's correct. And with the cable television, there was Supermarket Sweep, Trivial Pursuit, and I can go on and on and on, The Family Challenge. And Steve Harvey actually renewed the Family Feud. I just want to mention this, and then you take it away. In 2009, an actress and comedian named Kim Coles, she was the first black host of prime time. And the name of the show was Pay It Off.
Can I interject something?
Yeah, perfect.
let me just, I had to go my last card here.
Yeah. I have more than that. So you
I
gotta
know,
do
because
more.
I'm going to talk about women in game shows just really
Great.
quickly. Betty White was the first woman to host a game show, and she won an Emmy for that in 1983. It's what's called Just Men. And then it was 45 years.
Do we have a clip of that?
No.
Oh, I'd love
Mike,
to see that. Oh,
can
my
you get a
goodness.
clip of Just Men?
Wow, I never even heard of
Yeah,
that.
if Mike can get it, it'll be
on.
It'll put it in there.
As we told you, the score is 1-0, and the most keys gets a chance to start the car at the end of the game. However, there's one other thing. If you get all 7 keys, and it can be done, you'll get an extra key to try. So see what kind of luck you have this time. This time we're looking for, oh, that's wonderful, 2 no answers on the subject of finances. And a dollar goes so much farther than it used to. We asked these fellas the question before the show, do you think men handle finances better than women? And at least 2 of them said no, they don't think men handle them better. You find those no's and you get their keys, and we're going to start with you, Angela. This time, if you're wrong, the star's key goes to your opponent, so be very, very careful. I'll make my payoff up here, and we'll start with you. Whom do you want to ask?
Betty, I'd like to start with Martin.
And then it was 45 years before we had another woman host a show. Even though Betty White's show won an Emmy, it was after 1 year it was canceled. Because most of the hosts were male, and they were very attractive, and that's what attracted the female audience. I mean, I remember me being in love with Chuck Woolery from Love Connection.
Yeah.
He was a very good-looking guy. So the next woman to actually host the show was Vicky Carr in Win, Lose, or Draw at 45 years later. And they tell a cute story is that Vanna White was not a host of the show, but she was on Wheel of Fortune at that time, and Vanna White's very thin. Vicky Carr's thin, but not of Vanna White. So they wanted Vicky Carr to look more masculine. She couldn't wear a dress, only pantsuits. So they would send in a red pantsuit.
Why is that? Because they didn't want femininity?
Yeah, they wanted more of that edge to it.
Right.
And Vicky Carr couldn't fit into a pantsuit. So then the producers would scream, well, where's the red pantsuit? She said, I couldn't even get my thigh into that red pantsuit. So I'm glad that now that you mentioned that even took that long to even get a black female host for a game show.
That's right. And also I want to let you know, Let's Make a Deal was the first show that had ethnically mixed audiences. We were so far behind in a lot of things. I'd like to talk about prizes now.
Go ahead.
Because that's part of the game show. I mean, isn't that the thing that really lures us in to want to become part of the game show? You want to win, right? So prizes are awarded by product placement. What is product placement?
I have no idea.
I'm going to let you know.
Thank you.
It's a marketing technique to promote products or products purchased at a discount by the show. Then you'll hear many times promotional consideration. And those are small items like bread, peanut butter, jelly. And the game show receives a subsidy for actually putting the product on and advertising it as part of their show. So there's a lot going on with give and take, and again, it's all about money. That's what we're about. Now, there are game shows where you can win a lot. The monetary value can be upwards of $75,000.
$1 million.
That's true, if it's money.
Yeah.
But if it's products, like you can get a vacation show, you can get a car, you can get a backyard equipment. So what happens, I live in an apartment, I have a small kitchen, and I win all these fabulous kitchen appliances. Well, what do? I can't fit it in the kitchen.
You have to sell it.
You have to take it.
Oh, that's not good.
You have to take it or forfeit your prize. So back in the day, many of the contestants took bank loans to pay for the products, got the products, and then resold them. If you won a car, you could take the car, pay the government the taxes, pay the state taxes, and either have to drive the car to where you live. Another way.
So in other words, if you flew to California and lived in New York, you had to get that car home somehow.
But there was other options. They would give you a voucher. So they gave you a voucher for the car. It might not be the exact same car, but it was the make and the model.
But it was for the exact amount of the car?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you have to realize when they put products on TV, they're inflated. Just as like when you go into a car dealership and the sticker price is not really what you're going to pay. That's part of buying a car, leasing a car, you know, give and take, give and take. But anyway, they would get a voucher and they'd still have to pay the taxes in California or wherever.
Full retail value of the item.
That is right. That is correct. And they could take the voucher, come back to Long Island, come back to New Jersey, and use it for the car. So that's very interesting, isn't it? The best way to win on a game show, which I don't have to worry about it because I'm not a contestant, is to win money. Because if you win money, all you have to do is pay the government. If you win over $600, you're automatically getting a 1099. It's considered
Gain.
wages. So you have to pay on that. So either way, you know, the government got you. In 1960, Dwight D. Eisenhower, with the FCC, required licenses. They were all for 3 years, but now for less than 3 years, so that the public was prohibited from taking gifts. The FCC members could not take gifts. So if you work for a network, you were not allowed to take any gifts or be on a game show. Okay.
Okay,
Let's
I'm going to
talk
go
about
back. I'm going to go
Merv
back.
Griffin?
No, Chuck Barris first.
Oh, yes, that's so interesting. Great.
Chuck Barris came about in the 60s, and this was what I remember. Chuck Barris was somewhat of a eccentric. He had an actual urinal in his office.
I know when you walked. Could you imagine?
No, I just hope it was not a functioning urinal and just like a decoration. But he brought new youth to the game shows. And Chuck Barris actually wrote the song Palisades Park.
Is that right?
Yes, because he began in the music industry. And later in life, he wrote a book called Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, which was about assassins and claimed it might have been autobiographical. It was made into a movie by George Clooney. And but then later in life, he denied that he never worked for the CIA. But who knows, because Chuck Barris was such an eccentric kind of guy.
He was.
The first show he brought to, and he was on ABC. At this point in time, ABC was a dying network against NBC and CBS. And what he did is his two game shows that he was most popular for, the dating game and the newlywed game, revived ABC in the network ratings. So the first one...
That was in 1965.
Yes. The first one he did was the dating game. And the dating game had an unusual set in that it had like flower powers. Remember, we're in the midst of the Vietnam War now, so flower children were all over the place. So the background was very youthful with flowers. And a lot of the stars got their first break before they were stars on the dating game. And we have a clip now where you're going to see some of the stars, I'm not going to mention, so you'll be surprised, who are on the dating game. So we're going to insert that clip now.
Let's take a look.
To prevent our young lady from hearing the introductions of our gentlemen, we've been keeping her isolated off stage in a soundproof room. Let's bring her on stage right now. A former beauty title holder, she creates beauty of her own on canvas, and as an accomplished artist and sculptress, she hopes to open her own gallery. She's from Corpus Christi, Texas, finds relaxation in many outdoor sports. We're delighted to welcome to the dating game, Farrah Fawcett. He's been selected Mr. World 2 times, Mr. Universe 5 times, Mr. Olympia 4 times. He is an actor. He's studying business at UCLA, and Graz, Austria was his birthplace. Please join me in welcoming to the new dating game the current Mr. Olympia, Arnold Schwarzenegger. She was the girl in the T-Bird in American Graffiti, and her book of poems entitled Touch Me is being hailed as a bestseller. I'd like you to join me in a warm dating game. Welcome for Suzanne Summers. She loves sketching and drawing, playing basketball and candy and bubble gum. Please join me in a special dating game. Welcome for a fine young man, Michael Jackson. Good luck to everybody, and here we go.
Now, there was one little person who appeared on the dating game that should not have been on the dating game, and that was a serial killer by the name of Rodney Alcala. Prior to being on the dating game, nobody knew this, he had killed one person already. He would, remember, we are back in the 60s. There's no Google search, there's none of the internet search and all this other stuff. He passed the initial background check, But he won the date from the woman, and somehow the woman must have known, I don't want to go out on this date. She never went on the date. Thank God she might not be here today. But actually, there's a movie coming out about this by Anna Kendricks called Women of the Hour. I went to look for it. It's committed to Netflix, but it's not showing yet on Netflix. And you're going to see the dating game in there. So here is one really bad story where now they have very serious background checks when contestants go on
because of that.
Yeah, yeah, yep. So the next popular game.
I'm going to just interject.
That's fine.
Chuck Barris. The Newlywed Game, he extracted humor from the audience. He was the first one because they felt, you know, if the Hollywood Squares were celebrities, why not do it with ordinary people? Yeah. And the networks really didn't go for it. But what happened at the time, Robert McNamara was making a speech on all the networks.
He was Secretary of Defense.
Correct. On CBS, NBC. But ABC did not air him and aired the Newlywed Game.
And it had the higher ratings than McNamara, who was talking about the Vietnam War.
Yeah. So that was pretty ingenious that they did that.
We have a little bit of a clip from Newlywed Game. I'll talk about it in a second. But Bob Eubanks was the host, and he was the youngest host ever for any game show. He's 28 years old at the time. And he coined the word making whoopee. So the Newlywed Game was just these ordinary people and with sexual connotations. And there was one question in folklore related to the Newlywed Game. I'm not going to mention it, but we're going to show the clip, and you read the lips, you understand. And the question was, what's the most unusual place you like to make whoopee? So let's insert the clip, and you'll see the answer that was given.
Gentlemen, where specifically will your wife say is the weirdest place she's ever gotten the urge to make whoopee? The weirdest place. Bill?
In the bathroom sink.
The visual's a killer, isn't it? Stephen.
Oh, did we do it so often? I don't know. I guess,
No, weirdest place.
Oh, the weirdest place.
Yeah. Stick with me, Stephen. I know you're still worried about bubbles.
Weirdest place. So many. Oh.
Hurry, please.
In the bathtub.
Bathtub. Rick?
The shower.
Shower. Hank?
In the car.
Car?
We were coming home on the freeway one day, and she says, "You ready?"
On the freeway, right. I'm going to take the side streets hereafter. I'll tell you what. We'll be back in a minute. We're going to reunite these newlyweds, maybe. We'll see how well the husbands have predicted.
That's Susie.
Oh, okay. Here's the last of our 5-point questions. Girls, tell me where specifically is the weirdest place that you personally, girls, have ever gotten the urge to make whoopee? The weirdest place. Olga? Yes, Olga?
Go ahead.
Yes, Olga.
I'm trying to think. Gee, Henry, what did you say?
Hey, no, don't ask him. He can't help you out at all. No.
It's still there.
No, what I'm talking about is the weirdest location, the weirdest place.
Location.
Yeah.
I don't
Olga, the weirdest the location or place, you know what I mean? Olga, give me an answer, please. You don't know? Okay, the bell is rung. No answer. He said it was in the car, on the freeway is what he said.
Oh.
Okay, let's go on quickly. Debbie?
At the movies?
At the movies. He predicted you would say in the shower.
All the honey.
Sandra?
And that's it for the Newlywed Game. They were very, very popular, and they had very, very long runs on television.
Okay, let's go to Jeopardy.
Okay. I don't have much on Jeopardy.
Well, Jeopardy actually was Hangman.
No, that was Wheel of Fortune.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, but I do have something on Jeopardy.
Okay, Jeopardy, okay.
Can I go to Hollywood Squares first?
Do Hollywood Squares. And then I'll go back to Merv Griffin.
Hollywood Squares was, the host was Peter Marshall, and it was the largest set ever built in a game show. And people looked at it and said, oh, this is never going to work. But Hollywood Square coined the word zingers because they'd have a panel of Hollywood actors who, non-scripted, were asked a question, and then they'd give one-line zinger answers. And they had regulars. Everybody wanted, Paul Lynde's the most famous for being in the center square, but you had constant repeat actresses and actors. Rich Little, Charlie Weaver, Wally Cox, Rosemary were constantly in Hollywood Squares. So one day, Florence Henderson, we're going to show a clip, I was asked the question, does humming really improve your tennis game? So now you're going to see the clip and you're going to see her answer.
Oh, Florence Henderson. According to Sports Illustrated, will humming help your tennis game?
This struck me funny. Will humming help my tennis game? Sure, why not? It takes your mind off your balls or something.
That was a good one.
Yeah, it was funny. And now they could not stop laughing.
They cracked up almost for 15 minutes because it was so unexpected.
Yeah.
So unexpected. You got to remember the times then also, you know. It wasn't,
and it was very, for the time, that answer was.
Question.
And that actually showed that answer.
No question.
Now the good news, in 2025, CBS is bringing Hollywood Squares back to air as a game show, and the center host is going to be Drew Barrymore.
That's great.
Yeah.
You know, they actually lined up to try to be on that show because it would give them exposure.
Yeah.
And all these celebrities were on a wait list to get onto this show.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to now gravitate towards Merv Griffin. Merv Griffin, as you know, was very innovative, and he wanted to do a game show. I'm caught here, but I'm okay now.
You're sure?
You're sure. And he wanted to do a game show, and it was called Jeopardy! But he said to his wife, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
But he did host a game show before that.
He did. I don't remember.
Yeah, Play Your Hunch for a year, and he got hooked on game shows.
Yeah, and that's why. But he was very innovative in it.
Yes, he was.
So his wife came up to him and said, 1528. 1528.
What does
and
that
he
mean?
said, how many feet in a mile?
Oh.
Game show. So he pitched it to the president of NBC, Grant Tinker, and it was picked up, and it's all history now.
Yeah.
But also another little tidbit, or what is it? Spill the tea? I'll spill the tea for her.
Thank you.
Is that Merv Griffin wrote a lullaby for his son, and the name of it was A Time for Tony.
Oh.
And it is the theme song for Jeopardy, and now it's renamed Think. So Mary, I'm being like this. They want me to wind down, so we have to end our show. My
no, we got a few more. Well, let's rush through this because we got some scandals we haven't gotten to.
5 more minutes.
Wheel of Fortune. That's because Pat Sajak ended his career this
Age
past
70, Friday. Age 77.
Yes, but he did retire from. Wheel of Fortune was a show that showed in the afternoon and at night. And in 1975, he quit the daytime version. And we're going to show you a quick clip of Vanna White and him having a very interesting embrace, because there was always a scandal about the two of them.
Mm-hmm. So we have about 15 seconds left. I don't know what. Come here, baby.
Oh, sure, I get it.
The other show I need to cover is Press Your Luck, because of the fact we had a super fan. There's super fans who watch these shows.
Yes, sure.
I have 2 other shows, this one and Millionaire. Michael Larson was a super fan of Press Your Luck. And Press Your Luck, there was a whammy, and you would hit this big board, and if you hit the whammy, you'd lose your money. And most of the time, people would get 6 tries and then hit the whammy, but Michael Larson, for 47 times before he hit that whammy, because he studied that game, studied it and memorized the patterns that we're going to show on the board. So what this did, it changed the way that networks contestants can pick up patterns. And we have a little short clip of Michael Larson and the suspense that was driven by the fact when he went 47 times.
Oh, 106,851 on the line. Stop at 750 and a spin. One more spin you have to take, Michael, before we can deal with the earned spins. Here's the last one you must take. $107,101. A trip to the Bahamas. A trip to the Bahamas. With that money, you can buy the Bahamas, Michael. 2,636. You're at 110,237. They go to you, Janie. 2 pass. One at a time. Here they come, Janie. 93.85.
Come on, big bucks.
You got a long way to go, Janie.
Come on.
Stop at $750. All right. Hold everything. We're at 10,135, Janie. Michael is at 110,237. To say the least, you will have to get something that gives you an additional spin in order to stay in this game and continue, because CBS will relinquish its entire daytime schedule for this show to go on if you keep going. Are you ready, Janie? Yeah. Is it Michael going to hold on to that 110,000? Let's see, Janie. Stop at a Mexican cruise. What's the difference? It is Michael. 110,237. We'll be back. We'll be back sometime.
To win, but he did not have a good life after that. He actually, here's the little T part of it, he actually was caught up in a couple pyramid-type scandals and died an early death at an age of early 40s.
That's sad.
Yeah. And the other big scandal you're going to see if you research this is the English version of Millionaire, which involves Charles Ingram. Charles Ingram and his wife were again super fans, along with a gentleman named Waddick, last name. And the wife and Waddick and Ingram and Waddick were in the fast finger. These to recap Millionaire really quick, there was a fast finger area, and they would ask a question. Whoever hit the buzzer first got on. And took 2 times, and Ingram finally got onto this hot seat to get in there. And what happened quickly is he, wife, and Waddick had developed the systems of coughs, and they would cough the answer. So actually, Ingram went on to question number 10. And he had 1 lifeline left, and it revealed 2 answers. And the wife coughed twice, and you're going to hear that, and it was the actual...
You have a clip.
Yeah, we have a clip of the wife coughing and the cheating that went on. The producers got wind that something wasn't right, and they actually picked up on this very quickly. They gave him the check, actually, on because he did win the $1 million. They gave him the check, but then he and she were, 3 of them were later prosecuted. He was a major in the Army, and they removed his rank as a major. But they were both prosecuted for their crimes.
No more rigs, because Congress took care of that.
Yes.
We're running out of time, so Mary and I, this was so much fun. We do so much research. I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you next time. Our show will be after the summer. Bye,
Bye, guys.